of our Elul program, and you may have just heard, or maybe it's just me, that recording is in progress. So if any of you don't wish to be recorded by face, feel free to stop your video, although I love seeing your faces, so I hope you don't. So we are reading today what the soul does when the gates are still open, which is chapter 7 of this book, which, as you can see from all my little posties, is one of my favorite books, and one I truly recommend reading cover to cover. This, as we know, how many of you, just raise your hand for those of you who I can see, how many of you have gone to at least one other of the Elul study sessions? Okay, so most of you, perfect. Okay, so now you're familiar, you're kind of in the loop of Alan Liu's thinking and his writing and his deep spirituality. And he is orienting us to the 10 days of Teshuvah, the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And as you know from this book, the whole notion of Teshuvah is that it is an ongoing process, and that we are not meant to just show up on Rosh Hashanah and be ready, but rather that we are meant to take the month of Elul to really prepare our souls for the work that is to be done on the holy days. I hope most of you have read the chapter. We're going to be looking at sections of it today and discussing them. But my take on this chapter was, I really saw it in two sections. The first half dealing with the notion of Teshuvah and return, and the second half dealing with the notion of renewal. And we're really in the space between those two holidays. So one of the things that I'm sure I've shared with you, at least some of you in the past, is how I've always been very puzzled about how Rosh Hashanah precedes Yom Kippur. That logically speaking, to me, it would make sense for Yom Kippur to come first, that we would cleanse ourselves before starting the new year, rather than starting and then cleansing ourselves. And the best explanation I've been able to find for why it makes sense, not only because God said so, but is the idea that the renewal that comes on Rosh Hashanah, the hope and the optimism, is what allows us to be honest with ourselves on Yom Kippur. That boost we get with the holiday opens us up for the honesty and introspection that are needed on Yom Kippur. That it gives us strength to be able to do the work that we're meant to do. Rabbi Liu focuses on Nitzavim, on the Torah portion called Nitzavim, in this chapter. Coincidentally, that is our Torah portion for this week. So any of you who are looking at this chapter today, it's like pre-Torah study, because we're really focused on Nitzavim. Now, Reform Jews consider this Torah portion, Nitzavim, to be of such central importance that we have chosen it as our reading for Yom Kippur morning. So that is not the traditional reading, but it is what most Reform Jews do. So we not only read it here at this date in the calendar as we're approaching the Yamim HaNoraim, the High Holy Days, but we read it again on Yom Kippur morning. And it is very much focused on personal choice and personal accountability. So what we're going to do is read little sections of it and talk about it. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully successfully. Does anybody have any questions before I do that? No? Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. So everybody see it? Put a thumb up if you can see it. Great. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at page 152. We're going to look at the parasha, these verses from the parasha. So somebody want to read? Alice? Okay, so you're going to start with, and it shall come to pass from Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1. Please.
And it shall come to pass when all these things have come upon you, the blessings and the curses that I have set before you, and they will rise up again, Hashev Otah, in your heart, among the nations to whom the Lord your God has driven you, and you will return, Veshafta, to the Lord your God, and listen to God's voice. Then the Lord your God will turn Vishav, your captivity, and have compassion on you, and turn Vishav, and gather you in from all the nations where you have been scattered, and God will circumcise the foreskin of your heart, so that you can love God with all your heart and with all your soul. And you will turn Tashuv, and you will hear the voice of God, and do all the commandments which I have commanded you this day. And God will turn Yashuv and rejoice over you again for the good, the way God rejoiced over your ancestors, if you turn Tashuv to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Alice. So what are some takeaways that you get from these verses in the Torah?
Rabbi Roger.
I think that you're not only are we turning, but we're in relationship with God, and God is active in this time. It's not only what we do, but it's what God does that supports us to turn. So it's a relationship.
Beautiful. So there's a reciprocity. And of course, teshuva comes from the root shuv, which is about turning or returning. And Rabbi Lou, highlighted that in the way he wrote this, so you could see how many times that verb appears in these passages, which I think is 7 times. Okay, so we've learned about reciprocity. I know, Roger, you wanted to say something?
I did. Thank you, Rabbi. I'm just kind of wondering, and it says, and then your Lord your God will turn your captivity and have compassion on you. And I'm just thinking, which captivity is he referring to, is being referred to here?
Well, it's the notion that in the time to come, after the Israelites enter the promised land, that they are going to fall prey to foreign gods, and they're going to have bad things happen to them because of their straying from God. And so it's kind of a foreboding or premonition of what's to come.
So it's a prophecy.
Yes.
I see.
Okay, Gail.
And isn't it that he's spelling it out actually in the next page, and God will circumcise the foreskin so that you can love God. It's usually, to me, about having faith in me, in God, in other words. I'm going to be doing things, hopefully, that you're going to learn from, but have faith in me. And as long as you go along with me and you believe in me, that you're going to do well.
Okay, so
I'm not always sure I agree with that, but this is kind of like what I'm sensing, because he keeps reminding us, there will be commandments when I give you this day. Rejoice over it.
So, Gail, I'm really glad that you pointed out that verse about circumcising the foreskin of your heart, which is so graphic, so powerful. What do you think that means?
So the foreskin of your heart. Well, get to the essence of what's really into your heart.
Okay, Alice, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think it's giving your heart to God.
Or removing maybe the skin so that you can reach your heart faster. I don't know.
Okay, so removing a layer
Yes,
that between Joni,
between you and God.
You know, in previous chapters, Rabbi Lou spoke about the brokenhearted, that God responds to those with a broken heart. And I kind of feel like this is maybe that's what you have to do to really, then that's just another way of saying a broken heart is circumcising it and committing yourself, making that that breach, that covenant with God, by breaking your heart and really accepting what he's offering, what God is offering.
okay, thank you. I think somebody else's hand is up, but I can't see. Is somebody else waiting to speak?
Yeah, Alana.
David and Alana.
I was
David
going
wanted-
to say that it refers to being authentic, to dropping pretenses.
That's good.
Okay, nice. And Alana?
For me, it refers to the opportunity to like return to what you're born with, and that kind of coming home, the naturalness of who you are. And actually, it was the few lines prior in regards to captivity. I appreciate you providing the historical context. When I listened to it, I heard it refer to our own inner captivity,
Beautiful.
basically the ways in which we each are caught by even if you take the next line, the nations where you've been scattered, all the places, and whether it be technical things in life, emotional things, all of the layers that we are just caught in, so that, and our own self, our own minds and toil. So I feel that then following line, uncircumcised, the foreskin of your heart, is a very graphic and physical representation, like the circumcision of a newborn, to return us to that pure initial state of who we truly are.
Well, it's really interesting that you're saying that, because essentially when we circumcise a baby boy, it's because he in that sense is not born perfect, right? That we are imprinting him or bringing him to a higher level through that circumcision. And here too, so I think that one of the things that's running through this chapter and Rabbi Lou's wisdom is the notion of consciousness and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
In the Bible, in the Torah, the Lev is not traditionally the seat of feeling, but actually the heart was the seat of wisdom. It's like how we understand the brain. So I think quite literally circumcising the foreskin of your heart was a way to take the veil off, like from in front of your eyes, so that you are more aware and more conscious of your life and your choices and what you're doing. Okay, good. Any more takeaways from just these verses? Because we could probably spend the whole hour just on these verses, but I want to move forward. And there's another thing I want to highlight here about.
Marty's holding up his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. Marty, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as you said, taking and circumcising and removing a little layer, to me, is opening up the heart so that you can accept everything that he is offering you.
Okay, beautiful. I want to, keeping all this in mind, I just want to go to page 154. And there's a passage here. This is a passage I love. I'm not sure I really understand it, but I want to talk about it. It starts with transformation. I'm just going to read it. Transformation does not have a beginning, a middle, or an end. We never reach the end of Teshuvah. It is always going on. We are awake for a moment and then we are asleep again. That's the notion of awareness I talked about. Teshuvah seems to proceed in a circular motion. Every step away is also a step toward home. That's the line that I'm wrestling with. So one of the things I love about these passages from Deuteronomy are the way they highlight the unending dynamism of Teshuvah, that it's not like linear, that you go from here to there. It's this reciprocal process. It's an ongoing process. There's not a beginning. There's not an end. Does anybody want to comment on this? Every step away is also a step toward home. I'll tell you what I think, but first I want to see if anybody has a smarter idea than me.
I think every time you discover, you try to think about yourself and process where you are in life, you may come up with something and then you go back again and say, well, where was I before? Where am I now? And I think you're in communication with God. You're talking to yourself, but he's right there.
Thank you, Gail.
I'd like to add something which may be kind of a side issue, but when I think about that line, every step away is also a step toward home. The question it raises in my mind is, what is home?
What is home? Yeah.
And in what way does Teshuvah, does God help us to define home, that place where we're finally going to feel that we belong and that we're safe? And it's, I find it very comforting to be able to think, I'm almost home.
Yes, so in his book of words, Rabbi Larry Kushner, and I've studied this with some of you before, defines Teshuvah as coming home.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, Rabbi Kushner is, God willing, going to be with us for our Kavanah retreat this year. So he defines Teshuvah as coming home, which Rabbi Luz seems to indicate as well here. And I would say in that sense, Amy, what you're saying is coming home is this idea of coming home to where we are at one with ourselves, right? Like atonement at one-ment, right? That we are inhabiting our lives, that we are true to our values, that we are living in alignment with our goals and our vision of ourselves. And I think maybe this is just the Peshat, the simple layer of meaning here, but every step away is also a step toward home. Is when we think about a circle, and he's talking about Teshuvah being like a cycle, that a step away is also a step toward coming back. Does that make sense to people?
But back where?
Back home.
Where isn't that God? Isn't that back to God?
Well, it depends on how you define home.
Because up on the top of that page, he says we are in the predicament that has brought us to the point of transformation because God has driven us there. In other words, that predicament is a part of the process. It's a gift, an agent of our returning.
Right. So I think
Returning, it doesn't say returning, I'm sorry.
Oh, right. But I think, that turning, when we talk about Teshuvah, it's turning to oneself, it's turning to God, it's turning to people with whom we're in relationship. There's a lot of different kinds of turning involved. All right, let's go on. I want to look at page 157. Right. Marty, will you maybe unmute yourself? Thank you, please. Okay, so let's look at these passages that continue on from Nitzavim. It's chapter 30, verse 11. Somebody want to read this?
Because this commandment to do teshuvah is not too wonderful for you and is not distant from you either. It is not in heaven, so you can't say, who can go up to heaven and bring it to us and cause us to hear it so that we can do it? And it is not beyond the sea, so you can't say, who can go across the sea and bring it to us and cause us to hear it so that we can do it? But the word is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, so you can do it.
Okay. And what is that message? What is God saying here? Very simple. God is saying this isn't too hard. What I'm asking you to do is not too hard for you. You can do it. And then, Rabbi Lou goes on to talk about the hindrances that come between us and doing. So here in page 158, just at the bottom of the page, he says, as we begin the process of teshuvah, we need to make a conscious effort to overcome the momentum of this denial and avoidance. This is an effort well worth making. That pain, that afflictive energy that rests on the surface of our hearts is just below it as well. That will be the catalyst of our transformation. So 2 of the main hindrances to teshuvah are denial. Oh, no, not me. I don't have any work to do. And avoidance. Not ever confronting what it is we need to do to change ourselves, to be able to come home. And one of the things that I really love that he talks about here is all of the feelings that we have that inhibit us from doing the important work of transformation that we should do. Let's read this here where it says, these feelings are so familiar to us. Does somebody want to read?
I'll read. These
Thank you.
feelings are so familiar to us, we usually believe them to be part of our intrinsic being. They are not, and in this sacred time of transformation, while the gates of heaven are open and we are finally awake, we can see that they are not. We can see they are just impulses arising for a moment, the way wind and rain and snow arise for a moment in the world. They are wind and rain and snow, but they are not the world. They are not us. They only become us by our own choice, by our own choosing to see them that way, by our choosing to cling to them so tenaciously. We can make another choice if we wish to. We can choose to allow these feelings to rise up and then let them fall again like a hot breeze.
Thank you. So what is he getting at here? I mean, the feelings that he names in the paragraph above: anger, boredom, fear, guilt, impatience, grief, disappointment, dejection, etc. How do they get in the way?
Rabbi, I'd just like to say, I think it clouds your thinking.
Okay.
This is, I guess, why what you start off saying, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, we have to purify ourselves. We have to, it's not an easy task, I don't think, but I think that's what we're shooting for, is to just focus on what we have to do to get to this point. And what I hear Rabbi Lou saying is, you'll be distracted. It's like a Torah scripture. Don't look to the right, don't look to the left. Just, just keep persevering and remember what you're trying to do during this period of time. We're looking for some kind of spiritual clarity.
Okay, beautiful, Roger. Thank you.
is your issue,
I think,
probably not your state.
is that somebody speaking?
Nares, and it would be used as an agent to pass on information. The Abwehr itself was later involved in plots to overthrow Hitler, and Bonhoeffer had heard.
I think Amy's on a call or something.
Oh, okay. So I think, one of the lessons he's teaching here is very much a lesson of mindfulness. And this is, as I said to you, I think that this chapter has a lot to do with consciousness, the circumcising of the heart, that our feelings are not us. So instead of saying, I am afraid, it's I feel fear. So I am not my fear. I have fear, but that's not me, right? I am bored. That defines me. Instead of saying I am bored, I feel boredom. That instead of labeling ourselves as our emotions, what he is suggesting here is that we can choose who we are. Again, this notion of choice. But first, the first step, and maybe the most important step in this period of time, is raising our awareness, being conscious of what we're feeling, being conscious of what the obstacles are between us and our teshuvah. That's the first step. And then to make choices. Well, I feel this way, but it's not who I am. It's how I am feeling right now. Does that make sense? It's very much the work we do in mindfulness meditation. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that beautiful passage from Shoftim that talks about the gates, and instead of the external gates of setting up, that they actually reflect how we filter the world through
Yes.
our eyes and ears and our senses. So that notion of being aware of how we're analyzing what's in front of us and how we're choosing, that seems a really critical first step when we look at blessings and curses and teshuvah and alike.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mark.
Rabbi.
Yes, Alana.
Hi. Actually, I think for me, this concept is a build on the circle description that you were discussing, and the line that you said has kind of perplexed you, that maybe doesn't as easily fit in that paragraph that we just looked at. Because to me, that line says, like, each time we step away, maybe from like that home or the truth of who we are, we have an opportunity to come back to it. But we have to be aware, first of all, that we've even stepped away, and that these are a choice, so that there are choices in doing that.
Thank you. Beautiful. And I want to just elaborate that and make this last point of the first, what I think is the first theme of this chapter, which is teshuvah. So this is the last point of this chapter, of this half of the chapter. And that's this passage that starts here at the bottom of page 159. And this is the simplest and most frightening truth about all this business. Anger is a choice. Boredom is a choice. Fear is a choice. No one can hold a gun to our heads in this regard. No one can make us feel this feeling. No one can crawl inside us and alter us. We are responsible for our own state of consciousness. The great drama of this season is the drama of choice. And that is why this Torah portion has taken center stage for us and is read on Yom Kippur, because it's really all about, the holidays are all about personal accountability and making our own choices and making good choices. So this is part one, and I want to move us to part two, which I call renewal. And here I want us to go to the way he starts this part of the chapter, which is really about what happens to us when we lose our mojo. You know, I had a conversation the other day with somebody who was just telling me, I need a shot in the arm. You know, prayer feels stale on my lips. I don't feel inspired by anything. You know, what happens when you feel that way? So let's just look at the bottom here. What do we do when we run out? Somebody want to read that?
I'll read. What do we do when we run out of gas? What do we do when we feel like we're running on empty? What do we do when everything we do seems dull, when life seems barren and drained of color and taste, when the landscape that used to thrill us with its beauty now lies before us flat and dull, its radiance drained away? What do we do when we can't summon the enthusiasm we used to have for our work or for our marriage or even for a simple walk through the world? What do we do when we admit to ourselves in the secret darkness of our heart that we really don't care anymore about the things we used to care about? Here we are in the life or the job or the marriage that we got ourselves into when we did care. Here we are, daily required to espouse feelings and principles and justifications we once fervently believed, but which we now neither feel nor believe anymore. What do we do when we are daily afflicted with a sense of having sold out, of going through the motions, of doing something we don't really believe in? What do we do when we realize we are suffering from that contemporary epidemic, the burnout syndrome?
Okay, you can stop there. Thank you, Amy, for reading so beautifully. Gail has her hand raised, and then I have a question. Gail, you're on mute. Gail, did you have a question? You're on mute.
I think your hand was raised from earlier, Rabbi.
No.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So you don't have a question. Okay, perfect.
No, thank you.
Okay, so you know, there's this made me think about this Hasidic saying when I was reading this piece, which is, let me not die while I am still alive.
Yeah, that's good.
And all of us feel this way at times. You know, none of us are immune from burning out, from going flat. It can be because of a loss. It can be because of a pandemic. It can be because, you know, any number of things. So what I'd like to do is we're going to break up into very short Hebruta of 3 or 4 people to talk in a personal way about what has been effective for you when you feel this way in life. What are some things you've done to help you get your mojo back? And then we'll talk when we get back a little bit about Rabbi Lou's suggestions before we conclude. So Craig's going to break us up into discussion groups. The discussion is, what do you do? What do you do when you've lost your sense of vitality?
Okay, here we go, Rabbi.
Thanks, Craig. Oh, wait, I think I have to stop the share
It's
for you
okay.
to do it.
They're going to their rooms now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh boy,
Okay.
everybody went, good.
Yeah, what I did is behind the scenes while you were sharing, I signed everyone.
Oh, great. Look
I
at
know more than
that.
I know more than I think I know.
Look
The
at
only way for
that.
me to learn is to get thrown in.
That's
Such
true.
is life. All
That's
right.
true. So do you
So
have
let
anything?
me just stop the recording, excuse me, because we don't need to record. I'll pause this.
Okay, so anybody have any
It happens.
thing that they want to share that came up that was that is how you shake things up, enliven yourself, get out of a rut? That's fine if nobody wants to share. Kathy, are you going to speak?
I was just gonna say, like I had learned, I think actually at a mindfulness course that you gave several years ago about the gratitude journal. I think we talked about doing that, and then, just trying to remember the blessings that we have in our life, even in the face of devastation and sadness, and like allowing yourself to feel that horribleness, right? But not obsess over it, like just give yourself that time or a time limit, I guess, even on a daily basis or whatever, and say, and then try and think of the things that are good in your life.
Right. So the gratitude journal is a way of raising awareness, right? So there's that theme again of being conscious, circumcising your heart to be present. Anybody else want to share anything that came up in your group?
Gail, in our group spoke about two things. One, or Allison, I mean, one being out in nature, Allison talked about, which is so immediate. And then the other one is moving. So like moving to a new place, changing our circumstance.
Right. And Rabbi Lou talks about that too. And I think moving actually came up in the group I dropped in on as well. Not moving places, which is also true, but moving our bodies. Right. So we are integrated human beings, body, soul, mind, spirit, right? So sometimes moving the body shifts other things as well inside of us. And one of the things, I want to share this. I don't want to go into everything he says. He talks about turning inward, and he talks about prayer as one of the ways that we generate vitality. But he also talks about stillness. And I want to share that with you. I really love this passage. I'm going to share my screen. And it's page 169. Moving right along. And it is here. So step number 1. Does somebody want to read that?
I can read.
Thanks.
So step number 1 in the process of spiritual renewal, according to our tradition, is this kind of subtle inner turning, either through prayer or through faith. Step number 2 is almost precisely the opposite. It involves neither turning nor any kind of movement at all. It involves being still.
Keep going.
When we defy the sense of meaninglessness that afflicts us, galvanize ourselves for transformation, and open ourselves to the possibility of change, we in no way deny or run away from the reality of our situation. In fact, we do exactly the opposite. We embrace the emptiness. It is precisely our failure to inhabit our life which has rendered it dull and meaningless.
Okay, stop. Thank you. It is precisely our failure to inhabit our life which has rendered it dull and meaningless. So what does that mean?
I think it means embrace who you are, whoever you are. Just own it, so to speak. There's this book out now by Diana van Furstenberg, and she says, own it. Whoever you are, be who you are. And that's kind of it. Don't try to be, like I think David Foster said, be real, be authentic, be who you are.
Okay.
It's also seizing the moment and grabbing potential.
I don't know who said that, but thank you.
Gina.
Gina.
Thank you, Gina. Well, one of the things we started with in the first half of the chapter was this idea that it's avoidance or denial that is an impediment to teshuvah, right? And here I think he's restating it in a different way by saying, we need to inhabit our lives. We can't avoid or deny. We have to be where we are, even when it's hard, which is, I think, what Kathy said. Even when we're grieving or struggling with something, that we need to move through that and be present for that in order to get to the other side of that.
I also think it means, for me, it was, are we sleepwalking?
Yes. Yes.
Are we really conscious? Or are we just going through the motions of our life until we have to get knocked over the head to wake up?
Yes. Beautiful. And I want to just look at this last passage with you from page 172. Karen, will you read where it says the present moment? Can you? You see it okay?
The present moment is the only place we experience ourselves as being alive, the only place we experience our lives at all. The walk through the forest, the focus on the path, on the process of life, rather than on some goal or end that exists beyond the present tense reality of our lives. This is the answer God provided for this student. You don't feel your life. Your life is dead to you because you aren't in it. If you want to come alive again, if you want to bristle with wonder and intensity, then you have to inhabit it, that dead, meaningless life that troubles you. So inhabit your life, be present in it, and watch the gray concrete turn a brilliant emerald green.
Beautiful. I think that, part of the way we do that is by being present where we are, right? Like being conscious of where we are. This is all about being present, being mindful, being aware. And the last thing he talks about in this chapter is clearing out the dead weight. So what is the dead weight? It's those things that no longer serve us. Maybe it's a vision of who we thought we would be that we're never going to be. And it's impeding us because it's a constant disappointment to ourselves that we are not there. And we're hanging on to that, and that's dead weight. Or we're hanging on to a relationship that has expired. Or we're hanging on to a job that is now dull and meaningless to us. What are those things that are just burdening us, weighing us down, unenabling us or disenabling us from inhabiting our lives fully? So that's for him really the last step of what we can do to renew ourselves. So any other comments, questions, thoughts about this chapter?
Rabbi, if I may add something.
Please, Amy.
I had a thought that sometimes what helps me inhabit my life more fully is when I force myself to listen to the positive reinforcement that I get from other people and the compliments that I get from other people, that I reflexively turn away where I've convinced myself, oh no, I'm not really that good. Oh no, I didn't really deserve, that kind of, positive observation. Somehow I fooled that person. I'm not worthy of that kind of approval. And I force myself sometimes to realize that I have to at least accept that maybe I have done some things that are worthy of that kind of approval. And maybe I have done a good job, or I have done something that makes other people happy, and it's okay to let that in. And it is strange. I would imagine there are others of us here who have had that reflexive pushing away kind of reaction. I don't know what causes it. But anyway, I find that it helps me sometimes to consciously recognize that I do it and stop myself from doing it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. There again, it's an awareness thing. You have raised your consciousness to understand that this is something you reflexively do. And hopefully to change that. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Jody.
Yeah, mute. Also, I guess mindfulness is also getting rid of grudges or things that you might carry over from the past, or the way people do things, to accept other people and not trying to change them, and just be accepting. And I think you feel better yourself when you accept things that you can't change.
Right, because it's weighing you down, right? If you have an expectation that's not met of another person, it's not serving you to hang on to that. I always say to people, like, the most important parenting lesson I've learned is that it's a daily practice in modifying my expectations. Well, because if I don't, then I'm hanging on to something that doesn't serve me and doesn't serve my child, right? And it would be the same in any relationship. That, and I guess that's one of the things we've learned in COVID, is that we have to modify. We can't hang on to these things because it doesn't serve us. I saw somebody's hand up.
I had my hand up. I think it's just appreciating what you have in comparison to other people, that, there's always someone, even though you may feel like everything's on top of you, you look around and your life is good, basically is good. Fran and I are watching this incredible show on Netflix called All American. And it's about a young boy who's a fabulous football player. And the coach of the Beverly Hills team brings him to his house to live. And he plays with the Beverly Hills team. And he has left Crenshaw, which is just, a bunch of gangs and stuff. And the juxtaposition of his life back there in Crenshaw and his life living and dating a woman in Beverly Hills is, you see this comparison of different lives for the same person. And I recommend it to everybody. It's really, really good.
I always get good recommendations from you, Alice. So I wanted to conclude on two notes. The first note is with this little poem by Mary Oliver, which Karen actually articulated so beautifully already. But she says, listen, are you breathing just a little and calling it a life? While the soul, after all, is only a window, and the opening of the window is no more difficult than the wakening from a little sleep. So that's what we're trying to do on these holy days, is waken from a little sleep and open that window and call it a life. And as we conclude, I got an e-blast today from the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, which is an organization with whom I've studied and really admire the work they do. And they sent this beautiful New Year's video that I want to share with you. And the video opens by talking about this being a Shemitah year. You know, every 7 years is a year where we're supposed to let the land lay fallow. It's a year of rest and regeneration and renewal. So that's the theme of this video that we're going to share with you. So go ahead, Craig.
Sure, Rabbi.
We're not hearing the sound.
No. Let me try it one more time. And let's see.
So I just thought that was so beautiful.
Can we all get copies of that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Well, I'm happy to forward you the email if we have a list of everybody who's attended.
I can do that, Rabbi.
Okay, super.
Sure.
So unfortunately, I forgot to bring my shofar home to do a blast with the shofar, but wishing all of you a year of growth, renewal, peace, health, wholeness, and hope. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much, Rabbi.
Shana
Thank you.
Tova. Thank you.
Shalom
Bye.
Tova.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you, Craig.
Yes, Craig.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Stay safe,
Thanks.
everyone.
Rabbi.
Nice to